Hi, this is Connie Haxby, licensed clinical social worker, and today I'm going to talk about coping skills. And a lot of times I'll have patients who come in and they say, well, I just need to work on my coping skills. I need to work on ways to deal with things because I don't think that I'm coping with things very well. And coping skills can be a number of things, and even though there may be a list of 20 coping skills, not all of them work for everyone, and not all of them are going to be things that maybe you want to do. Now, there are certain coping skills that even though you may not be crazy about them, really will help, such as exercise. Exercise is probably the number one coping skill when it comes to anxiety and ADHD. Yes, it can definitely help with depression as well, but anxiety and ADHD, there have been studies that show that getting some physical activity, and not just exercise, I guess I shouldn't say exercise, but any kind of physical activity, gardening, going for a walk, hiking, things that don't necessarily feel like exercise, but getting some physical activity to release some of that energy and release some of those, endorphins that are going on that keep you anxious or keep you, with that attention deficit stuff. Those are definitely ways to help with that. Other coping skills are things like reading, journaling, listening to music, like I said, going for a walk, calling a friend, going to a movie, listening to podcasts, getting a massage, going to one of those salt cave places, going to one of those, floats where you float in the water with the salt, if that's something that you like to do. So, pretty much anything that gives you a sense of calming and peace and relaxation can be used as a coping skill. A lot of times when we're having some detrimental things going on in our life, though, those things aren't always possible. So, if I'm anxious at work, or if I've got something going on at work and I feel a heightened level of anxiety or a heightened emotion coming on, I can't just leave work and go get a massage. I can't just leave work and go for a walk. So that's where other types of coping skills come in, things that are not necessarily like physical, but more that have to do with the way that we think about things. And that's where distorted thinking comes in. So distorted thoughts are thoughts that we have that may or may not be true. So let's say I'm walking down the hallway at work and Bob, I say, hey, Bob, how's it going? And Bob just kind of ignores me and walks on. I can look at that and I can go, with my distorted thoughts, something that we would call mind reading or something that we would call jumping to conclusions. I would look at that and go, oh my gosh, Bob is mad at me. What did I do to Bob? Now I'm really worried, or I can look at it and go, you know what, maybe Bob's not having a great day and I'm not going to take that personally. So that's another type of coping skill, just sort of looking at the thoughts that you're having and reframing those thoughts, and also looking at the thoughts and going, okay, what is a more rational way that I can think about this? This goes back to, cognitive behavioral therapy that I talked about in another video. So just reframing your thoughts. Other things that you can do, that could be beneficial when you're in a place that you can't necessarily leave from, work or school or the grocery or in a car. So breathing exercises. There's a breathing exercise that I love to do when I can't sleep, and it really does calm my entire body, and I usually fall asleep pretty quickly after. And it also is something that is beneficial, just to that you can do anywhere because nobody knows that you're doing it. You're just breathing, right? So it's called Foursquare Breathing. And so the concept is, so you breathe in really slowly for a count of 4, and you can count that in your head. You want to hold it for a count of 4, and then you want to breathe out slowly again for that slow count of 4. And then you just want to breathe regularly like you normally would. Normal breath in, normal breath out. And then you want to do that again. Deep breath in for a count of 4, hold for 4, relax for 4, breathe out. So you want to do that 4 times, hence the Foursquare breathing. And that's something that can really help when you're feeling anxious or anything, again, in a car, in the grocery, at work. Other coping skills could be just simply not replying. If someone at work or at home is trying to push your buttons and poke the bear and, kind of throw their verbal jabs in, nothing says that I have to respond to that. I can ignore it. I can choose to ignore it. I can choose to engage in that, but, is that going to be something that causes more stress for me later on? Or is that going to, be this sort of like beginning to an argument? And that's something that maybe I don't, want in my life at the time. So, choosing things like not responding, responding with things such as, I'm sorry you feel that way, or responding with, thanks for the feedback, and we don't want to say that in a sarcastic way. We don't want to say those things in a passive aggressive way. But if someone comes to us and they're sharing something and it just sounds, like they're trying to get a rise out of us, or they're telling us for the 10th time something that they want us to do and we're just not comfortable doing it, we can say, what, thanks for the feedback, or I'll think about that, or, I'm sorry you feel that way. We don't have to engage with that. So those are just a couple of coping skills that we can use. Other things that I really like to encourage folks to do are journaling. Journaling is something people say, well, I hate writing. Well, no, it's not really writing. I mean, yeah, it is technically, but what journaling does and what writing does for us is, if we've got all this stuff, up in our head and it's just going and going and going and going, that's a lot of just noise, that just, what ifs and oh my gosh, and I'm so overwhelmed and all of these things. My to-do list is so big. So normally, if we're able to get that out of here and down on paper, we're able to process that out, write it out, and then it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So that could be another coping skill that you can use. So, utilize all of those things. If there's things, that I've talked about today that they're just not you, maybe I don't like going for a walk, maybe I don't like listening to music, maybe I don't like, journaling, or maybe I don't like, going and taking a hot bath, then don't do it. Don't tell your therapist, okay, I'll try these 10 things, knowing when you leave there that 6 of those 10 are just not going to work for you. You got to find what works for you. And that doesn't mean negative coping skills, by the way. So things like drinking and smoking pot and, gambling and sex to help relieve, the way that we're feeling as an escapism. Those are not positive coping skills. Everything done in moderation is probably okay. Things done to the point that they're not harmful to us, and if we're doing them for the quote unquote right reasons, are not harmful. But if you're using these things as a form of escapism, that's when it becomes an issue, because that, the things that I mentioned aren't necessarily good coping skills and positive coping skills. So keep that in mind as well. Just make sure that you're doing things that are positive and healthy and they're going to be good for you. So try those. And make sure that you're talking those over with your therapist. Even if you have to make a list, what you're doing, what you're trying, make sure you try to do them multiple times a week, if not multiple times a day, depending on your situation. And I promise you, they will, self-care is just so, so, so important. So coping skills, self-care, all those things go hand in hand. So just make sure that you're taking care of yourself, utilizing your coping skills, and yeah, doing things that are good for you. So until next week, have a great day.